If we get to his I know we're waiting for the "You Are Live" little motion thing, little sound. How's everybody doing?
Staying dry. You guys got right up there?
I believe that we are live now.
Oh, we are live. Okay, usually we hear that little thing saying you are now live.
Yeah,
okay.
David just chatted with me saying that we are live.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Seeing that we are live, we will we do have a quorum present. We will declare quorum and we will start the meeting. Call the meeting to order. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes for the open and closed meetings from May 27th. I believe they were all distributed via email to each and every board member. Has everyone had a chance to review, and do you have any changes, deletions, or corrections to either the open or the closed meeting minutes of May 27th?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented, both the open and closed meetings.
And PJ has give us a second.
Second, and unmuted, yes.
And so is all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? None. So the minutes are approved for May 27th, both open and closed. Let's move to the administrator's report, and I just might add again, if everyone who's reporting would be kind not to just read off. We do have the administrator's report in writing, but just highlight anything from your area that might be important that you think should be highlighted. Thank you, and I don't know who's going to start.
I'm going to start. As all of you know, today is a sad day for us. It's PJ's last meeting. It's probably a happy one for him. And we would like to present you with the governor's citation, PJ, which we mail to you to add to your other collection in your office on your wall. And basically, it's thanking you for serving as vice chair all these and a member of the board all these years, and recognizing your integrity and leadership during the pandemic last year, and your terrific contributions to all that we do in elections in Maryland. And I want to thank you so much. You've been a great help to all of us, and especially to me. And I really, really appreciate your time on the board. Thank you. Yay. And I'll turn it over to anybody else or to Nikki.
Well, I think what I had planned on saying something a little later, but I will take a prerogative and just say a couple quick words right now, since Linda brought up PJ. I remember in the middle of the pandemic was going on, and we come to a meeting. We had meetings almost weekly at that point, and PJ said that he couldn't sleep, that he was all night thinking about how to approach a certain subject that we were dealing with at the time, and that he couldn't sleep, and he was thinking about it all night. And I'll never forget that. And what that tells me is that you have a compassion for people, and that you have a passion to do the right thing, and that it will play on you, and it will be in your mind. And I have found you to be reasonable and knowledgeable and wise. And I'm a better person for having served with you, not only through a pandemic, but in general, because I think we got to really see how reasonable people were, because it was unreasonable times. And I count you as a friend, and I hope to be able to work with you again in some other fashion, because you definitely have my respect, and I thank you. I don't know if I know that two of our members didn't really get to work with you and just met you, but I don't know, Malcolm, if you had anything you'd like to say.
I would. PJ made me feel welcome from the first day that I arrived on the board, and I valued his opinions, valued his insight, and as you mentioned, his wisdom. And by him leaving, that puts me, the senior person, and I haven't been here that long. And it just, I was talking to someone today, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, maybe I ought to tend my resignation at the time that PJ is going off.
No.
But I've really enjoyed working with you, PJ. I've learned a lot from you. And it's interesting, every time I talk about you to my son, because he and I talk daily, and I say PJ Hogan, he says not related. He always says not related. You can make that distinction. But it's been an honor and a pleasure, PJ, and I'm sure I will see you in other areas and endeavors in Annapolis, whatever the case might be. And my life is much richer having met you and worked with you, and appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I mean, we've got a meeting to get to, but if you, with your indulgence, there are a couple of things I do want to say.
Sure.
First of all, those comments were incredible. I want to thank the presiding officers and the governor for appointing me to the State Board of Elections. I've enjoyed serving on this board very much. In my career, I've served on dozens and dozens of boards. This one is special because it's kind of the bedrock of everything else. You know, we got to have elections. We got to have fair, free, efficient elections. I've had the honor and pleasure of serving with 4 different chairs of this board and many board member colleagues over these many years. But I'll tell you, the one thing that's been constant is the incredible, outstanding staff, the leadership and staff at SBE. And I truly believe that election staff at the state level, at the county level, are one of the unsung heroes of government service. Everyone thinks they know how to run an election, but very few, if anybody, understands how complex and time-consuming they are. You know, we take it for granted that elections just happen, and everyone is quick to complain, but they're very slow to acknowledge and thank the people that make elections happen. And every election cycle has the potential for issues, but none in my lifetime. I'm 58 years old, so in my lifetime, none has been as challenging as this last cycle. I mean, to run 3 elections in 8 months in the middle of a pandemic. The word unprecedented was used a lot. It's overused, but I will reiterate my words following the conclusion of the November 2020 general election, that it was an unmitigated success, despite the most extreme challenges. And I want to thank the chairman, the new vice chairman, likely. I'm not making predictions. The other 2, my other colleague board members. I want to thank Linda, Nikki, Jared. I mean, I shouldn't name names. I mean, and the entire SB staff for their patience with me. My many questions and observations over the years, and salute their dedication and professionalism. And I wish you all the best and happy to help out in the future in any way I can. Let's get to the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hogan. So that being said, let's move on to the administrator's report, where we were heading.
Okay.
Who would like to
Good
start?
afternoon, everyone. And thanks, PJ, for your kind words on behalf of all of us that do this day in and day out. We are grateful for your leadership that you've shown us over the years. So wanted to introduce our newest member of our SBE team, who is on camera today, willingly to do that, Jen McLaughlin. She joined us earlier this month. and brings a wealth of state government knowledge and has jumped right on in to learn about elections. And so we're super excited to have her. Her priorities now are working on looking at all of the election bills that passed this past session and starting to implement them. And so you'll be seeing her face, hearing her voice, and we're super happy to have you here, Jen. So thank you. Go ahead.
No, just thank you.
So I think all of you have submitted your registration materials for the upcoming conferences in August. So thank you. We'll be pushing out more information as we get more details, but I appreciate your interest in joining us in Ocean City. In the interest of Bill's introduction, I'm going to skip over some other things. Happy to answer questions at the end if you have them, but just wanted to highlight a few other things for you. So one of the bills that did pass was to create a permanent absentee list and allow for voters to specify how they like us to communicate with them, absentee voters. And so two parts of that. There's also a part of that bill that has a usability study by the University of Baltimore, which is ongoing as we speak. But part of that bill, the permanent absentee list and the preferred communication method is later on the agenda as part of the approval of the mail-in ballot request form for the 2022 elections. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that when we get there, but just let you know that that's in progress. And also we just issued a procurement for a ballot printing, inserting, and mailing procurement. So that is out on the street with a staggered deadline schedule so that the final deadline is July 15th. So that is our big contract for the next potentially 3 election cycles for the vendors to print and mail absentee ballots. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mary to highlight the voter registration section.
Thank you, Nikki, and good afternoon, everybody. And to piggyback on what Nikki was talking about, we do have an empty voters release the weekend of the 26th and 27th, and it does highlight those the option for the mail-in ballot and the method for the ballot delivery. I just want to remind everybody that we do on a monthly basis have a number of audits performed by SBE's Janet Smith, and they're very comprehensive. 2 issues that we have going on with MVA data is we're working very collaboratively with MVA. We're still working, Mr. Chair, on getting the surrendered licenses from other states, and we have correspondence already in place, and we're hoping to have that fully implemented in July. The other project we have with MVA is doing a comparison match of addresses that MVA has regarding our inactive voters to see if MVA has a better address. And then we will be sending those individuals correspondence. So again, very collaborative with MVA. I provided some very interesting numbers regarding our transactions for MVA. And then for non-citizens, we had 9 that were canceled due to non-citizenship. 2 have voting history dating back from 2014 and 2016, and those records will be forwarded to the Office of the State Prosecutor. And I don't know who is doing Jared's part.
So Jared is off today, so you'll see in his report some highlights of the number of candidates that have filed for office, how busy the parts of our website related to candidacy and campaign finance are, and an enforcement action. Keith is also off, so I will just highlight, obviously, one of the big projects that we're working on now is the poll book project, and this is to replace the existing poll books that we have. Good news is we're in the final days of our technical evaluation. Every procurement has a technical evaluation and a financial evaluation. We are in the final stages of the technical evaluation, and then we'll move into the financial and hoping to wrap it all up at the beginning of next month. It's a lot of moving parts right now, but we're all eager to find out who is the selected vendor so we can get started on the, well, it's all hard work, but that's the hard work getting it all ready to implement. And that concludes the administrator's report, and we're all here to answer whatever questions that you have.
Does any member have any questions?
I want to ask Nikki, am I to understand that you're getting a new vendor for the poll book? You're saying you're looking for a new vendor?
That's correct, right? So we issued a request for proposals earlier this year, and we had, we're looking for a new vendor, a new solution, everything new hardware, new software. And we have several vendors that submitted proposals that are susceptible for award, and the evaluation team is reviewing that, the technical part of that now. They've had the equipment on site for 60 days where they could get their hands on it and test it and play with it and evaluate it. And that the equipment is now gone, and they're wrapping up their technical evaluation. So the end result will be a new software, new hardware supported by a new vendor.
So everything's going to be new this coming election?
That is the plan, yes.
So that's going to be added cost. I mean, since it's a new.
It's correct, right? This is a big project. We don't know the cost yet, but that will be coming soon. But we have been planning for this for quite some time. And so we have been telling the local boards to put money in their budget. We have put money on the project side for our budget. We're working with the state treasurer's office about financing it over time, which has less of an impact year to year, which is what the counties prefer. So this is not coming unplanned, but the total cost is soon to be learned, and then we can make then different decisions once we know what that looks like.
Did we purchase or lease the current system that we are using?
We own the current poll book system.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we will complete the administrator's report. I had one question, but it's going to be for Andrea, and he's not with us yet. So out of that report, so while we wait till he gets here for that. And then since Andrea is not with us yet, we will.
Bill, can I interrupt?
Oh, you're
Mr.
here.
Chairman?
Yes.
I am. I apologize. I'm not available by video today. I had to unexpectedly travel to DC this morning, so I'm just dialing in.
Okay.
So I'm happy to answer the question you have, or
yes,
jump right into the AAG's report.
Yes, and then we'll take your report. My question has to do with the referral of the non-citizens who actually voted. And finding the disposition of that. I know we've had that conversation before. What is the best method for us to find out from the state prosecutor what has happened and what the disposition is for those? I'm specifically concerned about those who not only were registered, but who voted.
Yeah. There is someone in the state prosecutor's office that I work with from time to time on the issues that are in common to both of our charges, and so I'm happy to reach out to her to see if she can pull that kind of information together. I'm sure they have it, and I'm sure that at least some of that would be available with some degree of detail. As you know, things get sensitive once you try to unpack the details of investigations and why things weren't pursued and so on. But I'm happy to find out what I can about that. Is there a time frame for which you'd like that information, or should I just sort of leave that open ended?
I mean, I'm not looking for it from the beginning of time, but as we're coming out again from whatever is reasonable to start with, and then if we could get it going forward, that would be helpful. That should just be something that they regularly provide, to us. I think the public has an interest to know that, and I'd like to know that. So
let me see what I can do.
Great, thank you. And then we move into your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to, again, focus only on the matters for which there are updates since the last time we got together. Last time, actually, that I presented one of these reports since the last meeting. I don't believe we had one. So that means skipping right to number 3, which is the NFB case. We are still in a period where the matter has been stayed to allow the parties to see if they can reach settlements. And we did report to the court a couple weeks ago that we have reached a tentative resolution on the merits of the case and are now trying to paper that settlement. And we're still going back and forth with the plaintiffs on what the particular terms of that are going to look like. But in the meantime, we were able to get an extension of the stay to August 2nd, 2021. So the hope was we could have everything resolved by then, but we'll see. Next matter is the Chung-Soo Yi matter. If you'll recall, these are the cases brought by an individual in Montgomery County challenging really the results of the 2018 elections on various grounds, including that ballots that were cast in a place of worship should be discarded or not counted because of a First Amendment violation. The state was not permitted by Congress to use a optical scanner to count ballots and so on. We are on appeal in one of those matters, and the appeal is now fully briefed. We were informed by the Court of Special Appeals that that appeal will be heard only on the papers, so no argument was scheduled. So we should expect a ruling within several months on that matter. He had appealed several other matters to the Court of Appeals, and a petition for certiorari, I should say. Those petitions were rejected, and so those matters are also put to bed. Finally, I have a new matter to present to you all. This was actually filed several months ago. We did not get wind of it until probably several weeks ago when the plaintiffs attempted to effect service on the Maryland defendants. The Maryland defendants are Governor Hogan and Secretary Wobensmith. The State Board of Elections or Ms. Lamone are not defendants in this case, but it has to do with elections, and so I figured I'd share it with you all. It names as defendants every sitting member of Congress, the president and vice president, every governor and secretary of state, the DNC, the Democratic congressional fundraising arms, the campaign committees, Facebook and Twitter, and several other entities and individuals. The challenge, and it's a very thick complaint, and there are lots of counts, pretty much the kitchen sink type complaint challenging the results of the 2020 election. I think I mentioned in this report, the theory of the case is that all of the defendants conspired or participated in a RICO enterprise to violate the constitutional rights of the putative class members of the plaintiff class, which the plaintiffs are purporting to represent 328 million Americans who were deprived of an elected form of government in the last election. So there's a bit of a mess in terms of how these kinds of cases get off the ground. Lots of people are still being served. We're reaching out to some of the other state defendants to, try to figure out how to coordinate something so the poor court isn't receiving, 50 versions of the same motion to dismiss. So we're working that out right now and evaluating the claims and figuring out a way forward. But it is an election-related case, and thought you all should know about it.
Great.
After that, I don't have anything.
Are there any questions for the Assistant Attorney General? Seeing no questions, we move into some proposed changes to COMAR.
Thank you. So you should have 2 documents related to this agenda item. One is a memo from me dated June 9th, and then that summarizes the proposed changes. And then you should have a 3-page document that actually has the changes in there. So I will just review them. So the first set of changes are to 33110203, which is absentee ballot applications. This is a cleanup change. There was a law passed in 2018 to require additional information from voters who wanted to receive their ballot electronically. The changes were made in Regulation 02, which is the formal request, but they hadn't been made to 03, which is the written informal request. So that language is just bringing it into compliance with the code and correcting some sort of numbering outline structure that was a little off. The second is 33110306, which is about absentee ballots, issuing and returning them. The proposed changes in this section codify something that we did by procedure in the 2020 election, and this is what we call the curing. So if I am an absentee voter and returned my voted ballot but neglected to sign the oath, we had directed the local boards to try to reach me so that I could cure that oath. So we had done this by procedure, and this is just codifying it into regulation, the same process that we did for 2020. The third is 33110507, which is absentee ballots and rejecting federal write-in ballots. Just as an aside, the federal write-in ballot is a ballot that is available to our military and overseas voters. This is a backup ballot for them in case that they've requested their state ballot, but they haven't received it and they're worried there's not enough time for them to receive that ballot, vote it, and get it back in time. That the Federal Voting Assistance Program in the Department of Defense makes this federal write-in absentee ballot available. And so the voters just print it out, they hand write in the candidates that they want to vote for, and they send it in. And if we don't receive a state ballot, then the local election officials will count that federal write-in absentee ballot. So that's what that is. In reviewing and looking at all these regs, I noticed that it still had an outdated requirement that if the voter dies before Election Day, their absentee ballot cannot count. That was changed in the electional article in 2015, and we just didn't see that provision in this section. So this is another cleanup to reflect current law. It's been implemented since 2015. It just didn't get changed in regulation. And the last set of regulations is 331704. A couple years ago, the state board changed its policy as part of its contingency plan to require the local boards to deploy extra ballots and other contingency supplies in case a court ordered extended voting hours during early voting. So the proposed changes in this section just make it mirror the board's current policy. And then in Regulation 06, it aligns this with other provisions that the state board has adopted, authorizing the collection of voted ballots at early voting centers and polling places. So again, another cleanup. So these are all cleanup regulations except for codifying the cure process that we put in place in 2020. So nothing new in any of these, but wanted to go through them so you understood what the proposed changes are. And so what is before you today is a request, what can obviously answer your questions, but a request to approve these for publication in the Maryland Register. They then get out for public comment, and then they would come back to you. We would summarize any changes we've received and come back to you for approval. I have walked through these with the Maryland Association of Election Officials. They have a regulation committee. I've met and walked through these with them and given them the opportunity for comment, and they had a few typos, but no substantive comments from MAO, the Maryland Association of Election Officials.
Okay, so are there any questions anyone has about any of these regulation changes? And again, if I may reiterate, one of them is a codifying of a curing that has been a matter of practice, but not a matter of regulation. And the other ones are bringing into compliance regulation with the current law. Did I recap that correctly?
Right, current law or policy, yep. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions about any of these cleanup or or the curator. So would we like to deal with these in mass? Are you comfortable maybe that we would vote for all of them at one time, or do we need an individual vote? Maybe ask our attorney, do we need an individual vote, or can we accept them a vote for all of them if it's all in the affirmative?
If it's all in the affirmative, I think you can vote for all of them. If there are any individual issues that members have with particular regulations, then you should break that one out and handle that one separately. But I guess we're not going to know that until you call for the vote, Mr. Chairman.
I think we would be able to partly tell that from discussion. Does anybody have any issues of discussion about any of the proposed changes? So the chair would entertain a motion that would accept all the changes as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. So let's bring this to vote. All those in favor of the changes that have been presented to the board today signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, all of the regulation changes have passed. So now we move to the mail-in ballot request form for the 2022 election.
Thank you. So in the administrator's report, I talked about some bills that required us to have a permanent absentee list. So someone could say, I always want to vote absentee, and there would be a process to do that. And also for absentee voters to specify how they would like election officials to communicate with them. The law specified that those options be mail, email, or texting. So that bill went into effect June 1st. And so I'm presenting to you today a revised or an updated application form for the 2022 elections to include those two things. This option for voters to say, I always want to vote by absentee ballot, and also the preferred method of communication. Now, I say this to you because I also mentioned that there's usability studies going on right now when this form is one of those very forms that are being studied. So this is somewhat of a stopgap measure. We hope that maybe by next month, we'll have the results of the usability study and can present a form that has been vetted and tested by usability experts at the University of Baltimore. This is not a super high peak time for people asking for absentee ballots for next year. There's not a lot of interest right now, so we don't expect this form to get a lot of use, but certainly we want to comply with the requirements of the law that allow voters now to ask for a permanent absentee. And so I think there's some question as to what's the right way to put that on the form. You'll see that we have it now as you can ask for the primary, you can ask for the general, you can ask for the primary and the general, and you can ask for 2022 and forever. This is what's being tested. So they may come back with a different way to structure this. But again, we just wanted to get something out there so that if voters want to make that request now, that they have that option and don't miss out on that opportunity. So I'm presenting this to you as the 2022 application form, understanding that we're going to be coming back soon with a revised form that reflects the good work at the University of Baltimore and the usability analysis that's going on now.
So this is Maryland application. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Fun. Go ahead.
So this is Maryland application for mail-in ballot 1.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Mr. Hogan?
Thank you. Since this is my last meeting, this is my last shot at making some comments on this. And I realize the need for a usability study because everybody can interpret things different ways. But can I just ask and suggest a thing since I looked through this? First one, let's see, line 4, where you select your party. And this is not a partisan comment, but I notice it says Democrat, Republican, so on and so forth. I've never seen it as Democrat. I've seen it as Democratic.
Yeah.
And just for my own edification, I actually went and Googled what's the right term for the party. And everything I could find pointed to Democratic Party. So I'm not trying to wordsmith. I'm just raising that as a.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We can
And I think check our old forms. I think they might have used Democratic and not Democratic, but.
Yeah,
So,
fair enough. We can make that change, certainly.
The other, okay, the big block number 7, where you choose one, how you want to receive the ballot. I believe, given everything we've gone through and, that last election cycle, the preference, at least the elections officials' preference, is to receive it by mail. I know there is internet delivery, but we had, how many times do we talk about, while it is a necessary option for some people, whether it's time, whether it's disability, you name it, the ballots have to be hand reproduced on an official ballot. So our preferred way would be people to receive their ballot by mail. Could we put the word where it says choose one? Could we put preferred next to U.S. mail? Or I prefer to the usability study, but you probably get my point.
Yeah, and I think there were so many different versions of this application for the general that there was a version with it on that it was in parentheses and it said preferred. So if that's the board's pleasure, we can certainly add that back in. I think it's just a matter of, we had just too many versions of the same form for the different elections, but certainly we can add that.
Then
I will say this is.
Yep.
Sorry, PJ, if I could just jump in on this issue. This is Andrea Trento. That is an issue that provoked a lot of input on many different sides of the internet delivery advocacy world. And so, I think there may be those out there for whom even that putting that preferred would seem to suggest that the board is discouraging people who would otherwise need or would benefit from internet delivery from actually, using it. And I believe the compromise, kind of the quote unquote compromise, was to make clear what the implications of internet delivery were simply as a factual matter. And I think we do that in this form on the note to the left, which is this is what happens when you fill out an internet delivered ballot. Somebody has to basically reproduce your ballot before it can be tabulated. And so I don't want to by any means make the decision for the board here, but I just want to say it's one that is of interest to many in the advocacy community, and I just wanted the board to be aware of that before it made that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Trento.
Mr. Chairman, I got one more, and I'll probably rile up our attorney one more time. I promise this is the last. So, and I read the note on the left side, which explains what happens if you request an internet delivery of your ballot. But the box where you check internet delivery, it then says, we will email you an internet link to open your ballot and print it yourself. And I realize there's a note over there. If I was making this form, right after the word yourself, I would put in parentheses or not in C note. To just make sure that they look to the left and read that note. Again, Andrea may say that'll cause more consternation amongst the advocates of internet delivery, but and this is my last meeting, so you guys are going to make this decision. So
after all those nice things Malcolm and I said about you, is anybody else on the board? Because I have some comments, but I want you all to go first. Sure, Mr. Fun.
I was wondering, I had some concern about that, and Andre, I appreciate your alerting us to the advocacy. Where we have the note, is it possible, I know it may cost more, but in printing it, just to highlight the note? And bring the note down beside the internet where it's located now. The note is just above the internet delivery on the right side. And you have, if you do not have a Maryland driver's license, maybe that could be put above all of that. But if you could highlight the note in yellow so that, because, you know, people don't read. They read what they want to, but if you highlight it to a certain extent, perhaps it might put more emphasis on why we're saying what we're saying about the internet delivery. I don't know if it costs more to highlight it, you know, in printing it or not.
So we don't print them. It's just an electronic form. I can certainly, again, you know, we're going to be asking, the usability experts are testing this now. And so we can ask them what's the best way to highlight, I'm not using the word highlight in like yellow, but just emphasizing text and see what they come up with, because color might cause problems for screen readers. It might cause problems with people with low vision who might be the beneficiaries of using electronic delivery. So there might be a more usable way to emphasize text, which I think is what you're actually asking for, is how do you emphasize the text?
Well, it's obvious we can't please everybody.
Any other members with a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and unfortunately my screen, I can't see you. I see other members of the board and staff. And I asked this question as someone who is a recent member of the board, and I don't have the history of the internet delivery, but this discussion has prompted at least a little bit of concern on my part that if someone prints their own ballot because they elect the electronic delivery, they print, and then we're informing them that it's not going to be read, what they fill out isn't going to be read. It's going to be read by another human, and thus their information, their personal information in terms of who the voter is and how the voter voted. Am I correct that that becomes information to the person who's receiving it, or no? I'm misunderstanding this?
It's just the ballot. So it would be not just, it's the ballot that has the ovals filled in.
Okay.
So if you vote in person or you get your ballot by mail, you fill in the ovals, and that ballot is printed on very specific paper, size paper. The tolerance for the timing marks that run down the side is very precise for our scanners to be able to read them. If you or I print that, if we get our ballot electronically and we print it from home, we're printing it on probably 20-pound paper, 8.5 by 11. Maybe it's color, we get all sorts of things back. The scanners cannot read that, let's just call it a home printed or any kind of printed ballot other than what's from our printer. So there's no personal identifying information on there. It is just the ovals that reflect the voter's choice. And that's what has to be duplicated during the canvass by the local boards of elections.
Okay, thank you. Again, that was probably helpful for anybody who's watching us in this meeting too. So that was really my only concern, was just process once this occurs. And I didn't want us to be running afoul of anything that could put us in line for a lawsuit of any sort, which I'm sure Andre has already contemplated with all of these things. But thank you for that explanation, Nikki. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I have a few. My first one, interesting, was the same as Mr. Hogan, that I believe that it was the Democratic Party, and I think that can be corrected. And let me say, I think that we have two things here. We have, number one, what is mail-in ballot application A that we need to have ready right now, and then we're going to be looking at B, which is after the usability study comes back next meeting. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, the hope is we'll get it in time to do July, but if not, it will be the next one. It will be very soon if it's not July.
So that was number one. Number two, I was looking on the form for somewhere, and it used to, I believe, talk about that if you're an unaffiliated voter, you can't vote in the primary. And I don't see that. I believe that the last one said that.
And
And
I
I
know
just-
the instructions that accompany the application. We can go back and check and see. I don't know that it was on the form itself.
I think it was number 9, and it said you must register with a political party if you want to take part in your political party's primary election, caucus, or convention. Check one box only. So I'm wondering if we could, I just would hate to, either in the instructions or somewhere, we need to let people know that they can't vote in the primary if they're unaffiliated. If they're going to check the unaffiliated box, they're not going to get a ballot for the primary. Would you
Right.
rather deal with that in 2 or
You were reading that off of what, the voter registration application?
from maybe? I had electronically. I don't have it up.
Well,
So-
I think that also applies to all of those parties that are listed except for the Democratic and Republican Party. So it's not just the unaffiliated, the bread of the primary.
Well, no, because they can caucus.
Hi, this is Donna. Let me just throw in that a Board of Education ballot would be issued to non-Democratic and Republican voters.
Well, then it doesn't matter as much, does it? Because if they're, my worry is that they have filled this application in, they're expecting a ballot to come to their home, and they don't get any ballot. But is there a Board of Education election though in every jurisdiction? There's not. So what do we do? But is there, or is that a concern? Am I maybe I'm concerned about something that isn't really an issue?
I believe at this point, only Baltimore City is a non-elected Board of Education. There are a few that are staggered,
Yeah, Anne Arundel.
but everyone except Baltimore City does have some level of elected Board of Ed now.
And also, would they also get a judicial ballot? Or would they
No.
not? They would not.
Judicial, this is a court case, Sussman versus Lamone, that indicates judicial contests are not considered, that's a lot of negatives, nonpartisan. Sorry.
I mean, I'm just looking for some other feedback. Does anyone else think that is not a concern? Am I bringing that up and it's not a problem? How about anybody from the staff, either Nikki or Linda or Donna? Do you think that is an issue at all, that someone would expect they're going down below and they want their ballot for the primary election to be mailed to, yet they're an unaffiliated voter?
Well, we certainly could put something in the instructions. I'm not sure we can fully explain it with the room we have on this form.
Yeah.
So perhaps Nikki suggests to Catherine that she put, I don't know, an asterisk after political party, or a parenthetical that says see instructions, something like that.
Yeah, that would be good. I believe. My next question is, again, already been talked about in some way, playing up. And again, I'm not, I know we have to get something out for A versus B, right? But so I'm a little less concerned about A. I don't think it's going to be but some way to talk about the preferred method. Some way to talk about the preferred method. And if we could, again, I don't care if this is A or B, I think that before, didn't we also mention that they had to have their own postage if they chose internet delivery? So maybe we could add that to our instructions to the left if we're going to do the C note or something like that, or highlight that text. So you must print your ballot, have an envelope, and pay for your own postage or something like that. Or return it to the election office. They could avoid postage by hand delivering it. And my last comment is, I've had this conversation with Nikki and Linda separately. And again, I'm happy to look at the solution to this in B. I don't have to have it in A, but I feel like the way it's being used, the way it's laid out right now, that a person would logically fill out, I want my ballot for all other elections, meaning, oh yeah, I'm going to be home by then, and they fill in their home address and check it off, and now they're on the permanent list and they didn't mean to be. So I'm a little concerned about usability there, but like I said, I'm happy to look what that solution might be when the usability study comes back, but I wanted to voice that now. And that was my only comments. Does anyone else have any comments based on that, or any new things that have come to mind? So now let's look at what are the reasonable things that we could change in A that have been brought up by everyone that we could approve right now, and then the rest be tabled until we have the usability study for mail-in ballot application B. So we could make the Democratic change, right? What other ones are reasonable?
Well, I guess in terms of simplicity of updating, the party change, yes, adding preferred, but you've heard Andrea articulate a policy reason for not doing that, but adding preferred is not difficult. I think adding the C note at the end of the internet delivery line is simple. I think the highlighting and adding additional text is really something that should be vetted through usability, because this form is getting to be already really busy, and we're adding now more to it. And I think giving them a shot to look at it all in its entirety, and what, we're going to have to prioritize some information to be on the application versus in the accompanying instructions. And so we have to prioritize which information is more important. And I think that should be vetted through the usability. So that would be my suggestion as to what can be quickly done with A, and what should we try to take advantage of the experts that we have working on this now.
Okay, so I'm just trying to be clear for everyone here. So the Democratic is easy. Let's check that off. The other, I'm even okay with holding off and having another conversation about the word preferred, but maybe add the C note. Does that make sense to people? What's the rest of the board think? I don't want to do all the talking here.
I would C note rather than preferred, and listen to what Andre commented about.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I agree that I would hold off on the preferred characterization. I'm in favor of referring the person or the voter to the notes. One of the things that you raised in your comments a moment ago, which was in the notes, and that the voter must print your ballot, have an envelope, and return it to your local election office, I think is actually important to let somebody know that if they're going to mail it, they might need to put a stamp on it. But it raises the question, if you look at the second page, which is the identification of the local election offices, some of them are identified only by PO box. So if someone intends to physically drop off their ballot, where we've said return it to your local election office. And if they want to do that in person, if they can do that, the second attachment with PO boxes doesn't give them enough information. So maybe this is a version 2 or version B as opposed to version A. But there's some clarification that needs to happen there in terms of how they're returning it if they intended to turn it in person.
Thank you, Ms. Woodward. That's a good point. So if we just, so then I'm just trying to back up here to, and I agree that maybe needs to be thought out a little bit more for a B. So do we just say the Democratic and C note and look to have all other issues addressed in B? What is everybody comfortable with?
That's what I would prefer. We need to get this form posted. It's overdue. And I think a couple of the small changes can be made, but I don't want to make any big ones without the usability experts telling us that they're okay. So I think we'd like you to approve this. I would really like you to approve this form today with Democratic and what that one other suggestion, please.
I think that's probably a wise point, and then we can look at all the other things over the next meeting or two. Does anybody have any other comments on those issues? So what we're looking at entertaining a motion to approve the form as presented with 2 changes. One would be Democratic, and the other one would be to where it said C note after internet delivery. And then we would look at another motion with a form that is updated after the usability, dealing with the other comments that we've had as well. So is there a motion to approve the form with those 2 changes?
Since I opened up these can of worms, I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the form that has been presented with 2 changes, Democratic and C note after the internet delivery clause, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes as presented, and we know that we will be looking at those other issues for B, version B. So we are past the electronic petition signature information. Is there any old business? Seeing no old business, we move to new business. Is there any new business?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we didn't talk about the electronic signature.
Oh, we didn't. Sorry. I put the 2 together and checked the wrong thing off my agenda. Let's back up in our agenda. We know that there is no old business. We're going to go back to the electronic petition signature information. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Duncan.
Hi, this is Donna Duncan, and I'm with the assistance of Andrea. To jump in here, the board asked last month for us to just put together a timeline of when we could present to you a more detailed information document plan for the potential approval for permanent acceptance of electronic petition signatures. And so while there are many large projects on the horizon, but there's certainly some before us right now. And Jared's away this week, for example. We're going to propose that we have a proposal to you by the September meeting. At that time, if the board were to propose regulations, we would publish them in the Maryland Register, and the public would have the opportunity to make comment. And as we've had comment on these before, we feel that we will have additional comment. How, assuming that there's no substantive changes following the period of comment, regulations would become effective in or around the spring of 2022. What we'll have is we will draft a regulation for your review. We'll have explanation, reasoning behind some of the key provisions, including what we learned from the availability of electronic signatures in 2020 and the early part of 2021 from petitioners and the local election boards. We'll have discussion on whether any other jurisdictions have allowed electronic petition signatures on a permanent basis and their experience. And then we'll have some discussion in this regarding the state board staff concerns, issues, as well as anything we receive from the local election boards. So that is our timeline proposal for bringing you more detailed information.
Thank you. Any board member have any questions? I think that is a great timeline, and the only thing I might add to that is I want to give time. I may say if we're bringing that into September meeting that we want a little time for the public, for the parties that may be affected to be able to provide their input so that they can be heard. So maybe if it's provided in September, it might not be until the October meeting that it's voted on, depending on what is recommended by the staff. But I think that's a great timeline. That's about 90 days. So that's
great.
That's fast. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any other comments or thoughts on that? Okay, great. Well, thank you. And now we do move on to a new business. Is there any new business? Seeing none, are there any disclosure of campaign contributions?
Yes, I guess since Mr. Cogan isn't here, I guess I have to fill in for him. I had one campaign contribution of $100 to Rachel Jones.
Okay, any others? Seeing none, we're going to move on to scheduling our next meeting. The regular meeting would be, I'm going to get my calendar up here, would be July 22nd, 2 p.m. Thursday. Is that a problem for anyone?
I don't think so.
So since that's our normal schedule, if nobody has a problem with that, we're just going to say the 22nd of July at 2 p.m. and that will again be a broadcast meeting. So I believe, unless there is any, I believe we have completed our regular agenda. I'm now going to read a statement, the script to go into closed session. I want to say, and I will repeat this, that the board has no further business to conduct after the closed session. So the closing of the closed session will also close the open session. So we will not be coming back into open session after we complete the closed session because there is no business to conduct after that. So the board will now consider whether to meet in closed session to discuss the compensation of employees over whom the board has salary setting authority as permitted under section 3-305 subsection B and 1 of the general provisions article. This exemption applies to a discussion among the members of the board regarding a personnel matter that affects a specific individual. Meeting in closed session will allow the members of the board to be briefed on personnel matters and share their views without compromising the confidentiality of those discussions. We will also consult with counsel to obtain legal advice and obtain information from staff about pending or potential litigation as permitted by Section 3-305, subsection B, 7, and 8 of the general provisions article. Meeting in closed session will allow the members of the board to seek and obtain legal advice with the board counsel without waiver of the attorney-client privilege and obtain information from staff about pending or potential litigation. May I have a motion to meet in closed session?
So moved.
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion having passed, the board will meet in closed session in accordance with exemptions B, 1, 7, and 8 of section 3-305 of the Open Meetings Act. And again, we will not be returning here to the open session, so this will close the open session as well. Thank you, and I will see some of you in closed session.
When, Bill, can we have like 5 or 10 minutes?
Sure, why don't we say, it is 3:07. We want to say 3:20. That gives you 13 minutes. Is that too long?
Too long.
Too long. How about 7 minutes?
So we'll meet you all at 3:15 closed session. All right, this meeting is closed.